So, did a Chinese submarine emerge from the shallow waters and take him right then and right there? Welcome back today, guys. I got a great story for you, so just to remind you, make sure you find the hidden clue and then put it with the timestamp in the comments of what it is, and you will be entered into the giveaway as well as pinned. Now, without any further ado, it's time to slip into a mind that's not our own. Let's go. This story takes place on December 17th, 1967, on the coast of Melbourne, Australia. Harold Holt was 59 years old, and he was 2 years into office as Prime Minister of Australia, and he was liked by the people of Australia. And when Prime Minister Holt disappeared, many said that he was at the height of his career. Can we find him, though? Well, you're about to find out. Now, when it came to activities, Harold was an avid outdoorsman, and his most serious hobbies involved the ocean, and were spearfishing, snorkeling, along with swimming. And he was in fact known by his peers as a master of the water sports. So it was December 17th, 1967, and it was a clear day. There wasn't even a cloud in the sky, and with this type of weather, it was just a calling to the Prime Minister that he literally could not let a day like this pass him by without going out for a swim. So Harold decided to go out, along with a few of his friends, and of course a couple of bodyguards, because you know he was the leader of a country, and they went to Cheviot Beach and began to just, overall have a good time. And Harold's bodyguards told him, to take it easy today, and asked him not to swim too far out because Harold recently had a shoulder injury and, he was still recovering from it. But in typical fashion, the Prime Minister, just brushed off any concern and, told his bodyguards his shoulder was fine. And then he proceeded in his favorite pair of dark blue swimming trunks to this alcove where there was a huge rock, and he would launch himself into the water like a missile. Then after that, his friends and him, they'd kind of play this hide and seek game behind that rock for a couple minutes. So, at this point, Harold is having a great day, and he's becoming more and more confident with his shoulder, after swimming for a longer and longer time. So since he wasn't experiencing any pain or discomfort, this kind of emboldened him that, his shoulder was back to normal. So he began to, swim and kind of just float further and further away from the shoreline until his entourage of friends and bodyguards could not see him anymore. So his friends at that time, they climbed up on the rock formations that jutted out of the beach to see if they could, locate the Prime Minister anywhere. And they looked, but they could not locate Harold anywhere. Now, I should add in that on that day, there was a killer lurking underneath the waters of Cheviot Beach. But it's not the type of killer you would automatically assume. It wasn't a shark or any living animal at all. It was a formidable riptide current that ran through that stretch of beach from time to time. And also at this point, real quick, they looked out in the water, and I was there waving, hello, everybody must subscribe now or you're gonna get lost like Harold did. I'm just saying, if I said it then, I probably still mean it now. And you gotta remember that the Prime Minister went to this beach all the time and wasn't worried. In fact, his last words that he said were, I know this beach like the back of my hand. Now, after his friends and bodyguards looked for several minutes and could not locate Harold, they alerted the Coast Guard, and shortly after that, the Australian Navy and Air Force joined the search. Now, at this point, it was unknown if anyone would ever see the Prime Minister again. So later that day, when the Prime Minister obviously did not report to work, there was of course messages on every printing press, radio station and television station across the world, and the headline was, "Australia's Prime Minister Harold Holt is missing." Now, even though this message was simple, it was very much perplexing, seeing as that the most important person in Australia just went missing, vanished, and that nobody could find him. Now that it was becoming more clear and clear that the Prime Minister would not be returning to shore, at least on his own volition, the massive search was launched to find him, whether it was dead or alive. First, during the search, local scuba divers entered the waters hoping to catch up to Harold, but only to be met with this harsh, choppy, tumultuous waves that proved to be too big of a task for even the divers. Next were the police and the Australian Navy, who arrived on scene and officially then commenced the search. There were these deep sea divers attached to these Navy vessels by safety tethers that forged through the choppy currents, just trying to, spot an eye on the Prime Minister. And the Australian Air Force at that point sent helicopters that scoured the coastline, searching every inch of that beach. And this amphibious mission became the biggest search and rescue operation in Australia's history. This search was so huge that it covered a very big area, and after only 2 days, officials were able to declare with certainty that the Prime Minister of Australia was dead. Now, according to experts, if the Prime Minister was to be found alive, he would have already been found. Australia now was moving quickly because they needed a new Prime Minister, and it was decided that a declaration of death had to be made sooner than later. So John McEwen was sworn into the vacant office immediately. But a lot of Australians were absolutely confused on how this search was only 2 days. I mean, you would think if the leader of your country went missing, you would spend at least, a week or two looking for them in that place where the body last was? I mean, how could it be that the search and rescue teams could state with absolute certainty that he was dead, but yet there was no corpse? So people, like they usually do, started asking questions like, did the authorities know something that the rest of the world didn't? And all of these unanswered questions have generated an endless number of conspiracy theories. Plus, it did not help that Australian law at that time made it so that it was forbidden for any official request of information to be made in regards to a disappearance unless a dead body was found. So you could say this created somewhat of a catch-22, in which the Prime Minister was conveniently declared dead for the sake of the Parliament, yet without a corpse, no one could ask any question about his supposed death. Plus, it kind of allowed officials to, sweep the whole matter under the rug as quietly as possible, which, if you think about it, is incredible for such a high-profile disappearance. And after that, it wasn't that long at all until there were rumors going on throughout Australia blaming the Australian government itself for the disappearance or death of Harold. Now, a lot of Australians thought this could be because maybe, just maybe, that the Australian government wanted out of the Vietnam War. And when it came to the Vietnam War, Harold famously said in one of his public speeches that was given in Washington, D.C., that he declared a full commitment to the United States and said he was all the way with LBJ. Now, many speculate that these statements led opponents of the Vietnam War to have killed him. But that was just one of the conspiracy theories. Another one also had to do with the Australian government, but this time it involved a military base called Pine Gap. Now, Pine Gap was referred to Americans as Australia's Area 51, and paranormal investigators have continuously linked this base with UFO activity and very mysterious experiments as well. Now, just like Area 51, Pine Gap was believed to be ran by the CIA, and some claim that the CIA ordered Harold's execution after receiving word that he was going to withdraw Australian support from the facility. Now, let me remind you that this is just a conspiracy theory, but supposedly, after the CIA found this out, they put a hit on him and covered it up as a tragic drowning. Now, one of the more crazy conspiracy theories was that Prime Minister Holt was actually picked up by a Chinese submarine that had been patrolling the waters off Cheviot Beach. And this strange story apparently originated from Australian Navy Commander Ronald Tecombe. Now, Commander Tecombe relayed the story to the British novelist Anthony Gray, who then turned this story into a fictional narrative entitled The Prime Minister Was a Spy, supposedly based on what really happened to Harold. Now, this book lays out an incredible story of subterfuge in which the Prime Minister of Australia himself is actually a double agent that serves for the Chinese. And as you can imagine, there were plenty more conspiracy theories to go along with this one. Now, it is to be noted that none of the investigations into Harold's disappearance within all of these decades have ever found any link to these conspiracies, nor any further clues as to what actually happened to him. But in 2005, the law changed in Australia, where an official inquiry was made into Harold's disappearance by his family that survived him. And by the end of the investigation, the official story was not an assassination plot by the CIA or Chinese submarines taking the Prime Minister out of the ocean. No, it was more of a bland and believable outcome that stated that the Prime Minister, Harold Holt, simply drowned, and that his body was never found because it got caught in rapid currents, which made it forever lost at sea. Now, even though it's been over 55 years, when it comes to Australians that are old enough to remember this, the anxiety in the case is still palpable. Much like us in America remember the loss of President JFK. In the circumstances that the loss of the Prime Minister, Harold Holt, is very similar, with the mystery shrouding the disappearance or death, and still generates plenty of conspiracy theories to this day. Now, let me know what you actually think happened to Prime Minister Harold Holt right now in the comments. And please, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and then you go to that notification bell and make sure that the top one, all, is clicked, because it's always darkened, but you got to make sure you click it as well. I hope you found the hidden clue, and I will be back for you Friday, because as of now, I am telling stories every Tuesday and Friday. Now you know. All right, I hope you have a good one, and I'll see you later. Peace.